tell me your name. Feels like you got
Guys, so now on, you have an idea what a receivable is. We focused on before in the current part of the accounts receivable and the recognition of the doubtful accounts expense. Now, let's try to go on deeper side of the accounts receivable. So when a customer buys something from you, it's not always about the recognition of the accounts receivable. Sometimes a customer may write a promise to pay on a certain date, which what we can call the notes receivable. It's different from the accounts receivable not only because of the written promise to pay, but it's also because most of notes receivable are to be collected for more than a year. There are two types of notes receivable. We have the interest-bearing and the non-interest-bearing note. So when we are talking about interest-bearing notes receivable, that means that there's an interest already written on the note. Now let's say we sold inventories to a customer amounting to 100,000 and we also receive a note with a written promise to pay. Knowing that you received the note, then your notes receivable would increase. That's why it would be put on the debit side. And our inventory is sold, which means it would decrease. That's why it is put on the credit side. Now let's say the note has a 10% interest. How are we going to account for the interest? Our entry would be a debit to notes receivable for 10,000 and a credit to interest revenue also for 10,000. Now what if the notes receivable is non-interest bearing? It is much more different compared to notes that are interest bearing, not only because the present value is equals to carrying value, but it's also because there are two interests given. We have the stated rate, which is the rate written on the face of the note, and we have the effective interest rate, and it is used to compute the interest expense or interest income. Now the next question is the present value higher or lower compared to the face value of the note? It depends. That's the thing that we're going to talk about right now. It only depends upon the comparison of the stated rate and the effective interest rate. So just remember that if both stated rate and effective interest rate are the same, which could also happen sometimes, then the face value would be equal to the present value. And now, what if the stated rate is higher than the effective interest rate? Then the present value would be higher than the face value, and it would result to a premium on the notes receivable. So the present value and the interest expense would both decrease every single year. Now, what if the effective interest rate is higher than the stated rate? Then the present value would be lowered compared to the face value, and both the interest expense and the carrying amount of the notes receivable would increase every year. Our next video about the notes receivable, we would focus more on the preparation of the amortization table, which is really important part of this topic. It covers the interest expense, the interest received, and the carrying amount, etc. So that's it for today, Accountaholics, and I'll see you on the next video.